welcome again this evening to our brand new program, Women to Women. And I have a very special guest with me tonight that I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But I'd like to thank our sponsors, Carpa Nevada LLC, distributor of fine Portuguese olive oils, balsamic vinegar, and international teas, as well as Villa Boss Deli and Cafe, home of Pete's famous chorizo. And now I'd like to turn to our very special guest, Ronnie Hanneman. Thank you, Ronnie, so much.
It's my pleasure to be here, Carol.
And you know, Ronnie, I have this kind of viewing puzzle in which I don't reveal what your passion really is, okay? We talk about your personal development, your personal growth, upbringing, places where you've traveled, where you've been, all of which give our audience, our viewing audience, some clues as to what might be the passion that's in your heart and how you serve.
Sounds like the old movie or the old TV show, What's My Line? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
Okay.
Yes, I do. And I hope some of our viewers do too.
I'm sure many of them do.
Ronnie, you are a striking looking woman. And I know...
I like the way you began that, okay?
Okay. And I know that just from some past encounters with you, that you have an international background. But would you tell us where you were born, where you grew up, and what kind of an influence did it have on you as adulthood is being created on those early childhood years?
Well, if you look at me closely, you can see that I'm very Germanic. So I was born in Germany of German parents, became a naturalized citizen when it was harder to become a naturalized citizen. You had to know the language, you had to know the history and the whole bit. I didn't have to know that, my mother did, because she was German who married an American after World War II. My first father was German, never knew him. But she married a military man, and as a result of that, I became, I guess, what you would call a military gypsy. And
traveled a lot,
whether we wanted to or not. I did not know what it was like to be stable, and that's one of the reasons I love communities like Carson City, because people here, went to school together from the first grade, they graduated together, they went to UNR together, and the whole bit. I can't even understand that, frankly.
It's a whole different experience. It really is.
It's a whole different experience, and in some ways, I sort of would have liked to have that, but I don't think, honestly, Carol, that I would have traded my youth for anything like that at all. I think though, with being a child, you like to make permanent friends, and
of course,
in the military, you cannot do that. People come and people go, but you become very resilient. And sometimes you're the new kid on the block, and other times you're welcoming the new kid on the block. So you roll with the punches.
Well, and I think that's a major clue as to what you do today so well, because you can roll with the punches. You have that personality inside of you that was developed because it needed to be developed. Sometimes it's a protective personality that says, I'm afraid sometimes to reach out and make new friendships because I know we're going to move pretty soon. On the other hand, you tend to think, well, we're going to make the best of this.
Well, I have to just tell you, Carol, I never felt that way.
Uh-oh.
I was always, I guess I'm like a little puppy dog, that wants to go out. I have a little Cairn Terrier that feels the same way I do. That's why I bond with him all the time. Is making new friends was always very, very easy for me, and going to a new school was very, very easy for me because I always thought it was a major adventure. Oh, who am I going to meet today?
Yes.
What experience am I going to have? And I think that has always been part of my personality. So I've never felt, I never cried that somebody left, or I never was the kind of person that was intimidated at all. So.
And I think with what you do today, that has, it's made an impact on you, and therefore it makes an impact on others, that we need to have dreams, we need to have a sense of adventure in us. And that serves us very well because we take a positive outlook in the communities that we find ourselves in, and others, if I can use this expression, they kind of feed off of us with that hope, with that, I think I can maybe try this, I can do it. And we need to have people like you, Ronnie, who instill that in us from experience. Not just from words, but from experience.
Perhaps, but I think a lot of military kids felt the same way, is that you could do anything at any time because you had been put into so many situations. So you have a lot more self-confidence
Yes.
than being in the same environment the whole time. So, in every job I've had, and I will not reveal it, I promise, has been the kind that you had to have a lot of confidence in to be able to even go for that job. And I think it was because of the military background.
I think all of us, if we're honest with ourselves and honest with others, that our upbringing as children has such a great deal to do with how we turn out as an adult or with what we do with our lives as an adult. And so there was a discipline in there that you abided by. And whether it came from family or it came from the acknowledgement on your part that here's a brand new school, here's a brand new community, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to stand it on its ear. They're going to know who Ronnie is.
Well, I'm a typical Aquarian. Change. I like change, so it didn't matter to me at all. And even at my tender age right now, I still like lots of change. It doesn't, I will not go off into the sunset, just sitting home on a couch. So.
Right, you'll ride off into the sunset on your own stride, your own walk.
You
well,
betcha.
Let me ask you, Ronnie. Okay, other than what you're doing right now, what were some of those jobs that you held that not only required confidence, but a sense of peoplehood, a sense of service with people? Because very much what you do today is interconnected, vitally interconnected with people. So,
well, I grew up at a time, Carol, where it was a little bit different than today, where service, you use the word service, okay, was considered a good thing to do. When I'm trying to think, 8 years old, my father was stationed in Fairbanks, Alaska, at Eielson Air Force Base before Alaska was even the United States of America. And took my first plane ride on TWA on a Constellation. I remember that today, and I was watching the whole time, and that was a long flight because the Constellation stopped and started and stopped and started.
Yes.
It had to be refueled a lot. I was so fascinated by that woman or those flight attendants that I thought, this is what I wanted to be at 8 years old. I knew I wanted to be a flight attendant. So when I graduated from high school, I went to New York City, and that was my goal and objective. I was there for about 4 months, and I had the opportunity to interview. I was only 18 years old, and this particular airline took the flight attendants at 18. I couldn't serve, well, in New York at that time, you could actually drink at 18. And over international waters, you could serve liquor at 18. So I was okay at that particular time. But I went in to interview and got the job right away. Next thing I know, I'm in flight school and I'm flying. And I thought that was the dream come true. And then you're in that, and then you've got to have another dream.
Why do you need another dream?
Well, because I think if we don't have lots of dreams, you get stuck. You get stuck. So I have always believed that what you do is you have the dream, attain it, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it's not really what you thought it was going to be, okay? So then it's time to have another dream. You always have to have something to look forward to, or I'm using the universal you, I really should say about me, but I always need to have another dream to look forward to. But I enjoyed my time as a flight attendant, traveled a lot to Europe. That was at a time when people were different as well, and I really liked serving them.
Yes, would you share that difference? Because I'm a part of your time period, and I remember distinctly what it was like to fly.
The people who flew at that particular time, not to say that they were, the elite or anything, they were not, but you dressed up when you flew. The service that you got on the airplane was much nicer, but that was a result of the people. And it was just a different time. It was just a very different time. And there was a lot of respect for everybody.
Yes.
Excuse me. And I think that was, very critical at the time. And then what happened, and the people today will not understand this, especially the younger people, is at that time they retired you at age 28. Not that I made it to that age group, but like most of us, you wanted to get married and have a child. And actually I was going to get married for a while, but I met a man who basically said, this is what we're going to do. So I did it, had a child, and at that time you couldn't marry. So then I had to have new dreams, okay?
That's right.
So I was a mother for a while, and then my daughter went to school, and I saw that, they start at age 7 when they were in the first grade or second grade to untie that, apron string. And I thought, what do I do now? What do I do now? And somehow or other, because I had the flight attendant background at the time, I always ended up in public relations, where I had to work with the public. And ended up at SeaWorld with Shamu and had a good time in San Diego. So I, was in the public relations department there, which then, because I was pretty popular there, they suggested I go for the tourism position at the San Diego Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I went in, interviewed, and beat out quite a few contestants for that. And basically that started me on another phase of my tourism career. So that was an interesting time, and I've traveled everywhere.
Well, Ronnie, I have to ask you this. You have been with people during the first half of your life all the time in one way or another. And probably you have come across with some results of knowing people that you can use wherever you go. Understanding human nature, understanding various types of personalities is so crucial to doing anything with the public. And I'm thinking you would have made a tremendous customer service representative for anywhere that you worked, because you had to tackle on an enclosed space called an airplane, many different personalities. Perhaps not as flamboyant as they are when they get on the planes today, but there were still some of them. What would you say are some of the best lessons that you learned about human beings before you came into this position that you have here in Carson City?
I think probably that people are all very different, and they want to be recognized. One of the things, going back to when I was a flight attendant, which was at a very different time, and I have to, reiterate that and stress that, is one of the things that we were told as flight attendants is you had to talk to everybody. And you had to work the aisle, because you were the public relations representative for that particular airline.
Correct.
And the service was a nice touch, but you were there primarily for emergencies and also as the PR person for that airline. And I recognized that, I was nothing. You didn't make that much money at the time or anything, but when I would come to the aisle and stop and talk to you, saying, how are you? Or if you had a book or whatever that I may have read, we had to read all the books at the time, is say, gosh, that's a great book. I just read that. And the people's faces light up when you recognize them.
Yes.
And what happens when you're flying today, they hardly look at you. They say, what do you want to drink or whatever. Anymore, it's just for drink. And then they hand you the drink and they're gone. And there was no, there was no recognition where I could have told you everybody on that flight.
I'm wondering whether technology has played a big part of this non-communication.
I don't think so. This has been going on for a while. That I think it's just that not to belabor the airlines, but they've become like buses. Very, very impersonal. Where before it was not impersonal, and the flight attendants were not impersonal, and the airlines were not impersonal. I think a lot of it happened during deregulation, because everybody could fly at a decent price. They got lots of flights and the whole bit. So it wasn't. Before it wasn't for everybody, now it became the masses. So I think that was the difference.
And deregulation took place, was it in the 1970s?
No, actually, deregulation took place more in the 80s. That was a lot of deregulation at that particular time.
Okay, so we're talking with young people who might be 20, 25, even 30. Not being able to experience what it used to be like, where courtesy and respect were very much a part of flying. Well, we're going to come back, because I know, Ronnie, that all of this at some point in time worked itself together where you became what you are now in Carson City. And I'm hoping that our viewing audience has picked up enough clues that they might guess if they don't know you personally, okay? We'll be back in just a minute to find out what Ronnie's passion really is.
This episode of Women to Women is brought to you by Carpa Nevada, LLC, and Villa Basque Deli and Cafe.
Are you looking for a healthier lifestyle? A more nutritious diet? Do you care about quality? If your answer is yes, or if you are just curious, come into Villa Basque Deli and Cafe right here in Carson City, Nevada. Discover fine Portuguese extra virgin olive oils, vintage balsamic vinegars, and a wide assortment of international health teas provided by distributor Carpa Nevada, LLC. In addition to these terrific items, Villa Basque is also the home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo, handmade on the premises from Pete's secret family recipe. Satisfy your culinary curiosities. Don't delay.
How was school today?
Cool, we learned what to do in case there's an emergency.
Oh, will you show me?
If there is an earthquake, then you get under your desk, duck, cover, and hold. And when the shaking stops,
we evacuate the school just like a fire drill.
I'm glad you both know what to do in case of an emergency, but I'd still be worried.
Check the phone, radio, or TV, and they'll tell you what to do.
Make a plan.
Assemble a kit.
Stay informed.
And be ready.
Hello again and welcome back to Women to Women. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess for the evening, and I'm with my very special guest, Ronnie Hanneman. And we have just reached the interview stage where I'm asking Ronnie to tell us when a light bulb, when a general recognition of what she really wants to do. Ronnie likes change. We've come to understand that. She's here in Carson City with what I consider to be a tremendously important public job. And Ronnie, would you share with us now what it is that you do? What position do you hold here in Carson City?
Well, the word public here in Carson City denotes that I work for the government, and I need to tell you I do not. Okay?
Right, you do not.
I happen to be in the public eye, but very much am the private sector, and I am the executive director of the Carson City Chamber of Commerce.
And I can tell you from just a very brief 2-year living time here in Carson City that you do a whale of a job, Ronnie, for all of us.
Thank you. I enjoy Carson City, and when you enjoy where you live, and especially this kind of a job, because I'm sort of the public relations person. Any Chamber of Commerce executive is considered the public relations person for the community that they promote. And
very much so.
Yeah, and you really need to like what you're doing, and working with the people and working with government and working with all aspects of the community. So
let me ask you, Ronnie, as executive director of the Chamber of Commerce here in Carson, what does that job description come across to you as? What are you responsible for, and how do you implement that?
Oh my gosh. I don't think we have enough time in the time that we have left to tell you that.
Give me the highlights.
The highlights. Well, I will tell you the biggest thing that we do is we want to make sure that businesses stay stable in this community and are successful. We also lobby, and I know that's a dirty word, but we don't really lobby the legislature, but we watch out for businesses as it relates to anti-government, if you will.
All right.
I like to make sure that Carson City is shown in its best light the whole time. 3 years ago, I inaugurated our basically what you would call almost a semi-city magazine. The one just came out recently. It's called Carson City in Focus, and it centered on sports and Carson High. A lot of the amazing people graduated from Carson High in the sports industry. There's just, it's just a lot. I do travel somewhat, but not to do the promotions like I would have working for a state or a city. But just really getting out there and making sure that the people who live here also become our sales force as well. Some of the other things that we've done is maybe not so glamorous, maybe not just being out there and talking, but I believe very much that a community is only as good as its citizens, and if the citizens of a community do not have a clean community, the people outside, do not look at us with respect. So we inaugurated 3 years ago a cleanup campaign. I believe very strongly at it about that. So we get volunteers from the business community that goes out and cleans up the city. We also very, very definitely anti-graffiti. Coming from Southern California, San Diego in particular, where the schools were a mess, graffiti everywhere.
I noticed that.
It was awful. Coming here, did not have it when I came here 13 years ago. It hadn't quite reached here. And within the past 4 or 5 years, you notice a lot more graffiti. Well, we're right on top of it. I want you to know we're right on top of it.
Good.
Yes, and we have fostered a great relationship with the Carson City Sheriff's Office and the Office of Alternative Sentencing, where when people call the chamber and say, I see graffiti, we're on it immediately. That's done. That's within 48 hours, that graffiti is gone.
Fantastic.
Yes, and I just feel keeping the city picked up is our responsibility, and keeping the graffiti at bay is our responsibility, because Carol, you've traveled a lot, and a lot of us have traveled a lot. The face of a community when you first come in is so important.
Yes.
And that's important.
Let me share this with you, Ronnie, as just a personal touch there. When I came out to Nevada to take a look at a place to live, we were moving from the Midwest at that time. I took a look at Reno and I took a look at Carson City. And I immediately fell in love with Carson City because of its public appearance. I thought this is not overwhelming in size of city, but look at the way the state capitol, look at the way the government buildings, look at the, to a certain extent, the European flavor of some of these old streets that they've preserved. They not only do they have a historical look about them, but they have an inviting, very inviting look to stop into a shop, to walk down the streets. The flowers are wonderful. So my compliments to you. Mes compliments.
And it's not just me. There's a lot of people who we're working towards the same goal. We have a lot of pride in Carson City, and it's small enough where you can make a difference, Carol.
Yes.
By telling the mayor, or
They're receptive.
They're receptive. I just talked, for example, I don't know whether this is going to come through, but I just talked with our assembly person and also our new senator and said, I have a real problem with where the old Boys and Girls Club was over by the fire station on Stewart Street. And when the Boys and Girls Club moved into their new building, instead of taking the buildings down, and I understand that there's money problems, they just put plywood up on the windows. And I said, at least can we be allowed to go paint it the same color as the buildings? I mean, these things are real important. They make minor, it's minor improvements, but we don't want to see, because nobody from anywhere else, or even a lot of residents, don't know why those buildings are boarded up. And especially in a down economy, it looks like something may have left,
Yes.
So I'm working on that now. So we're hoping within the next month or so that we'll get those buildings painted.
Great. And I have another question here. I like your sense of protectiveness towards trying to enable small businesses as well as large to be successful in this environment. And that's a tough assignment for this economy. And Nevada, the state by itself, doesn't share top honors in terms of, an income producing and a job producing state. So your plate is full on that. But what I wanted to ask, what is it, if you want to start as a young entrepreneur or even as an experienced business person, what do we need to understand coming into an environment, coming into Carson City? What do we need to take into account on our part, our responsibility, to ensure that we do the very best that we can to make our businesses run successfully?
I will tell you, in a community, I think it's just very, very simple. I could give you a lot, long answer, but I think it's very, very important that when you come into Carson City, to understand that you are not anonymous here. Not like if you lived in Reno or Las Vegas. You can go about your business and do whatever. In Carson City, You can spend as much money as you want on advertising, but if people do not know you, they will not trust you.
There needs to be a face to your
It
business.
has to be networking. Networking is key. And Carol, you've been here for a while, and I think you know that, okay? Is that you really need to go out into the community. You need to volunteer, let people know who you are, and then when they trust you, they will buy you, if you will. And I think that's really the key to success in our community, is to get out and about and not expect to open a restaurant or store where people will come flocking to you. They may for the first month or so because it's new and we love new things. But that where, you know, something else new is going to come in, and we all are ADD, if you will, okay? And we flock into something new. But I think if you get out there in the community and show your face and are sincere, and also do not talk against this community. One of the biggest things, Carol, if I may be so bold as to tell you,
Please do,
is that people come in from other areas, especially California, and they come here probably for the same reasons that you and I did, lack of traffic and all kinds of other things, and you know, the ambiance. But all of a sudden is, where is my Nordstrom's? Where is what, you know, whatever, or we did it this way, or whatever. And what there was a T-shirt that came out not too long, about a year or so ago, and it basically said, "Don't care how you did it in California," you know. And it's true. You know, you cannot go into a community wanting to change. Otherwise, why did you leave?
Or why did you come into the new community?
Why did you come into the new community? Why did you leave your old? And I think if you come in not wanting to change, but seriously be a part of the community, you will be accepted, especially in Carson City.
And that takes us all the way back to your earlier roots in childhood, because your attitude then and your attitude is now, Ronnie, and I'm reading this very clearly from you, is that when, no matter what new environment you move into, you work with their ways, you get to know them. They are the people who are going to be a part of your life and a significant part of it, more so than what you even anticipate. And to start out with negativity does nothing for either side,
well,
them
and
or you.
It's amazing how many people come here that are, you know, they get really excited and then they start complaining. And I look at them and I say, you know, and then when people come into the chamber and they want to start a new business, I tell them exactly what I just told you. I said, you have to come in, not a house on fire. You know, you have to come in and work within. You may not be happy with all the way things are, but you can change it slowly, slowly. And before you know it, it's done.
It's done. And it makes us a better person.
Yeah.
And I think it really helps the environment. Maybe one last question, Ronnie. And can you kind of put it into a thimble for us? Many people are afraid to go into a business or to start something new because of expenses, because of money. How significant is cash behind you to start a business?
That is the number one, the number one. If you do not have, if you are not well financed, you may not be in business very long. I think the national statistics for small business success is about 3 to 5 years. And most of that is because of lack of capitalization. You really need to, just because, and I can share this from a personal thing, is I thought, oh, good. I always love clothes. I love fashion. So therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little store. And it happened to be called Fashion Statement. I loved it. I learned how to do it. It was a great little store. It was a small store. But you know what? Not everybody buys clothes every day. Plus, I didn't know this market coming in. I'd only been here a year. And when you're coming from Southern California or places east, you dress. So my clothes were nicer. Okay, people here, you know, I wasn't here long enough to understand that it's mostly casual, it's mostly jeans and things like that. So I was basically the wrong place at the wrong time, and I closed after about 2.5 years. I had a good time while I did it, and it wasn't even so much for the money, but I didn't want to keep beating my head against a wall and continuing to lose money.
Well, Ronnie, all of this experience that you've brought to us this evening, the sharing of your personal life, we thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Well, thank you for having me, and Carson City is a great place to live, work, and play.
Thank you so much, and thank you, viewing audience. We look forward to next week with a brand new guest, but in the meantime, let's not forget what Ronnie has taught us. Have a good evening.